The first time it happened, Mia thought it was a cruel dream. She woke up to the sound of birds outside her window, the same song they sang every morning. The sun filtered through the curtains, painting golden streaks across her bedroom wall. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then she turned to see Ethan lying beside her, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths, and her stomach lurched. Mia stared at him, her mind racing. She'd just watched him die. She was certain of it, the screech of tires, the shattering glass, the blood on his shirt as he whispered, "I love you," one last time. It had been the worst day of her life. And now here he was, alive and whole, his hair a mess of dark waves against the pillow. She reached out tentatively, her hand brushing his shoulder. He stirred, opening one sleepy eye. "Morning," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. Mia's throat tightened. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Who else?" He chuckled, stretching and sitting up. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." She forced a smile, her mind spinning. Was she losing her mind? Had the accident been a nightmare, so vivid it felt real? She didn't want to ruin the moment, so she shook her head and kissed his cheek. "I'm fine. Just had a weird dream." The day unfolded exactly as it had in her memory. The coffee they drank together on the porch, Ethan's teasing about her overwatering the plants, the dinner reservation at their favourite Italian restaurant. She tried to shake the sense of déjà vu, but every detail was the same. The waiter's cheesy joke, the way Ethan ordered lasagna, even the song playing on the radio during their drive home. When they approached the intersection, her chest tightened. She gripped Ethan's arm. "Slow down," she said sharply. He frowned. "What's wrong?" Before she could answer, the truck appeared. Just like before, barreling through the red light. This time she screamed, the world dissolved into chaos, and then she woke up. Again. The birds outside her window sang the same song. The sun painted the same golden streaks across the wall. Mia turned to see Ethan beside her, alive, and she realised with chilling certainty that the day was repeating. The second time, Mia tried to convince herself it wasn't real. Maybe she was dreaming. Maybe she'd finally cracked under the grief and her brain was playing tricks on her. But as the minutes passed and every detail aligned perfectly, the birds, the sunlight, Ethan's messy hair and his sleepy smile, she couldn't deny it anymore. The day wasn't just repeating, she was trapped in it. "Morning, love," Ethan said, his voice light and warm, just as it had been yesterday, or whatever yesterday was now. Mia stared at him, her heart twisting painfully. He was so full of life, so here. She wanted to throw her arms around him and tell him everything, about the accident, about how she'd watched him die, and about how this day seemed determined to loop endlessly. Instead, she swallowed her fear and forced a smile. "Morning," Ethan frowned, picking up on the hesitation in her voice. "You sure you're okay? You've been off." "I'm fine," she lied, quickly getting out of bed before the weight of the truth overwhelmed her. The morning unfolded the same way as before. Coffee on the porch, Ethan teasing her about the plants, his laugh so familiar it hurt, but this time Mia paid closer attention. Every movement, every word, every tiny detail, it all felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. When dinner came, Mia hesitated as Ethan reached for his coat. "What's wrong?" he asked, tilting his head. "Maybe we should stay in tonight," she said quickly. "Order takeout, watch a movie. Doesn't that sound nice?" He chuckled, pulling her toward the door. "Come on, Mia. You love date night, and you've been talking about craving that tiramisu for weeks." Mia's stomach churned. She knew how the night would end if they left, but Ethan didn't, and no matter how desperately she tried to steer them away from the intersection after dinner, the same thing happened. The truck, the crash, the chaos. When she woke up again, tears spilled from her eyes as she turned to Ethan, alive and oblivious. This time, she whispered to herself, "I'll save him, no matter what." The third time, Mia felt resolute. She wouldn't let it happen again. She woke to the same song, the same golden light, the same man she loved more than anything lying beside her. This time, she didn't waste a second. She sat up, her heart pounding, and placed her hands on Ethan's shoulders. "Ethan," she said firmly, startling him awake. He blinked at her, groggy. "What's going on? Why are you—" "Something terrible is going to happen today," she interrupted, her voice trembling but steady. "I know this sounds insane, but you have to trust me." Ethan frowned, clearly concerned. "Mia, Are you feeling okay? Did you have another bad dream? It's not a dream, she said, gripping his hands tightly. I've lived this day before, twice. And if we go to dinner tonight, there's going to be an accident. A truck is going to run a red light, and her voice broke. And you're going to die. Ethan's face softened with confusion and concern. Mia, that's impossible. You're just stressed, or maybe you had a really vivid nightmare. No, she snapped, more forcefully than she intended. I'm serious, Ethan. We're not going to dinner tonight. We're staying home. Please, promise me. Ethan hesitated, searching her face. Finally, he nodded. Okay, if it'll make you feel better, we'll stay in. Relief flooded her, but it was short-lived. The rest of the day felt different, almost fragile. Mia couldn't help but watch Ethan like he might disappear at any moment. His laugh at lunch, the way he hummed while folding laundry, everything felt precious. When the evening came, they ordered takeout as planned. Mia curled up beside Ethan on the couch, feeling a sliver of hope that maybe this time would be different. But as Ethan stood to throw away the takeout containers, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. What is it? Mia asked, her stomach twisting. Work, he said, sighing. There's a small emergency at the office. I'll be back in 20 minutes. No, Mia said, leaping up. You can't go. But Ethan kissed her forehead and smiled. I'll be fine. He walked out the door, and 30 minutes later she woke up to the birds singing again. The fourth time, Mia woke with a scream. She bolted upright, her chest heaving, and immediately turned to Ethan. He stirred, startled by her outburst. Mia, he said groggily, his voice laced with concern. She threw her arms around him, clutching him tightly as if she could hold him to this world by sheer willpower. Ethan, you can't leave the house today. Promise me you won't. Ethan froze, then gently pulled back to look at her. Mia, what's going on? You're scaring me. Tears filled her eyes as she cupped his face. The day keeps repeating, Ethan. I've lived it 3 times already, and every time you... Her voice broke. You die. I can't let it happen again. Please, just listen to me. His brows furrowed and his concern deepened, but he didn't laugh or dismiss her like before. The day repeats? Yes, she said desperately, every detail, the birds, the coffee, dinner, the accident. I don't know why it's happening, but I can't stop it. You can't leave the house today, Ethan. Please, just trust me. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze softening. Okay, he said finally. I won't leave, I promise. Relief washed over her, but it was accompanied by an unease she couldn't shake. The day unfolded differently this time. They skipped their morning coffee on the porch and spent the afternoon watching old movies together. For the first time, it felt like she had some control. But as the evening drew closer, Mia's nerves grew. She hovered near Ethan, afraid that the universe would find some other way to claim him. Around 8 p.m., Ethan's phone buzzed again. It was the same work emergency, the same pull to leave the house. Don't answer it, Mia pleaded. I won't, he said, silencing the phone. For a moment, she thought she'd won. But minutes later, their smoke alarm blared in the kitchen. Ethan jumped up, alarmed. The oven, he said, running toward it. Mia's stomach dropped as she chased after him. Before she could stop him, a deafening explosion rocked the house, and then she woke up again. The 5th time Mia woke, something was different. The birds outside her window were silent. The sunlight that usually streamed through the curtains was muted, casting an eerie grey tone across the room. Her heart pounded as she turned to Ethan, expecting to see his messy hair and sleepy smile, but his side of the bed was empty. Ethan, she called, panic creeping into her voice. She threw off the covers and rushed downstairs, her pulse racing. The house was quiet, too quiet. When she reached the kitchen, she froze. There, sitting on the counter, was a single note in Ethan's handwriting. Mia, I know. Let me explain. Meet me under the oak tree in the park. I'll be waiting. Her hands shook as she read the note over and over, the words refusing to make sense. How could Ethan know? What was he talking about? Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and ran out the door, her breath fogging in the chilly morning air. The park wasn't far, but the entire walk felt like a blur. When she reached the old oak tree, she stopped short. Ethan was there, sitting on the bench beneath the sprawling branches. But there was something different about him. He wasn't surprised to see her. In fact, he looked like he'd been waiting for her for a long time. Mia, he said softly, standing as she approached. Her chest tightened. Ethan, what's going on? How do you know about the loops? About everything? He exhaled slowly, his eyes full of both sadness and resolve. Because I've been living this day too. Her knees nearly gave out. What? You... I've been waking up to the same day over and over, he said. Just like you. And every time I've tried to save you. Mia's breath caught. Save me? He nodded, his jaw tightening. In every loop, it's you who doesn't make it. I thought if I could change the smallest things, I could stop it. But no matter what I do, you're the one who... His voice broke. They stared at each other, realization dawning like a storm. They weren't trying to save each other. The loops existed to force them to make an impossible choice. Mia stumbled back, her legs trembling as the weight of Ethan's words sank in. No, she whispered, shaking her head. That's not possible. It's always you who dies, Ethan. I see it, I feel it. I've tried everything to stop it. Ethan stepped closer, his face etched with pain. And I've seen you die, Mia. The truck, the fire, even the simplest mistakes. It's always you. Every single time I've woken up knowing I failed you. Her chest tightened, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then what does this mean? Why are we both trapped like this? Ethan's jaw clenched, and he glanced up at the sprawling branches of the oak tree. I think it's not about saving each other, it's about choosing. Choosing what? Mia asked, her voice breaking. Ethan reached for her hands, his grip firm but trembling. One of us has to break the loop, but for that to happen, one of us has to let go. Mia stared at him, her heart shattering. No, we can figure this out. There has to be a way to save both of us. We just need more time, more loops, more... Ethan shook his head. We've already lived this day more times than we can count, and every time, no matter what, the outcome is the same. One of us doesn't make it. Her knees buckled, and Ethan caught her, holding her tightly. His voice softened, barely above a whisper. I've thought about this, Mia. I've thought about it every loop, every time I've lost you. If this is the only way, then I'll do it. I'll let go. No, Mia sobbed, clinging to him. I won't let you. I can't live without you, Ethan. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his own filled with tears. And I can't live without you either. But one of us has to, Mia. Otherwise, this will never end. She shook her head violently, refusing to accept it. There has to be another way. Ethan cupped her face, his voice trembling. If there is, we haven't found it, and I can't watch you die again. Not one more time. The choice loomed between them, impossible and inevitable. Mia felt like the world was collapsing around her. The weight of Ethan's words pressed down on her chest, suffocating her. This isn't fair, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Why would we have to choose? Why would anyone make us do this? Ethan pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her like it was the last time he ever would. I don't know, he murmured, his voice raw. But I know one thing, this loop is a trap. It's forcing us to make the hardest choice of all. And I can't keep watching you die, Mia. I can't. Mia buried her face in his chest, her heart breaking into pieces. How am I supposed to live with myself if I let you go? Ethan's hands slid up to cup her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. They were filled with an intensity she hadn't seen in years. You'll live because you're strong, because you'll carry us both, because you have so much more to give to this world, and because I'd rather lose myself than lose you. She shook her head, trembling. No, Ethan, I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. If one of us is leaving, it's me. You're the better half of this. You're the one who makes people laugh, who lights up every room. The kids, her voice cracked. They need you. And they need you, Ethan countered, his voice breaking. Do you think they'll be okay if I come back without you? I couldn't bear it, Mia. I'd fall apart. They stood there under the oak tree, holding each other as the seconds stretched into eternity. The world around them was silent, waiting for their decision. Finally, Mia pulled back, her hands trembling as they rested on his chest. If we have to choose, she whispered, her voice steady despite the tears, then we choose together. Ethan frowned. What you mean? We don't let the loop decide who gets to live, she said, her gaze fierce. We break it our own way. If it's about sacrifice, then we both let go. Ethan's eyes widened, and for the first time he looked truly afraid. Mia? No, but her mind was made up. She wouldn't live in a world without him, and she wouldn't force him to live in one without her. Together they'd face whatever came next. Together they'd end the loop. Ethan stared at Mia, his expression frozen between disbelief and heartbreak. Mia, you don't know what happens if we both let go. What if it means? He couldn't bring himself to finish the sentence. What if it means we finally get to move forward? Mia said, her voice trembling but resolute. What if the only way to break the loop is to stop trying to save each other and accept the sacrifice? Together. Ethan shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. But what if it means we're both gone? What if there's nothing after this? Mia reached for his hands, gripping them tightly. Then at least we'll be together. I can't watch you die again, Ethan. And I can't let you watch me die either. Whatever's waiting on the other side, I want to face it with you. Ethan's jaw clenched, his emotions raw and unguarded. This isn't how it's supposed to be, he whispered. We were supposed to have a lifetime, a future. I know, Mia said softly, her voice breaking. And maybe this is our way of taking that back, even if it's not in the way we thought. But I won't live in this endless loop, watching you slip away from me over and over. I won't. Ethan looked into her eyes, searching for something. Certainty, courage, maybe even a way out. What he found instead was love. Pure, unwavering, and just as powerful as the day he'd first met her. Okay, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. We do this together. Mia nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Together. They stood beneath the oak tree, the place where their love had once flourished, now serving as the altar for their final choice. Hand in hand, they closed their eyes, focusing on the love they shared, the memories they'd made, and the life they'd lived. They let the fear go, surrendering to whatever fate had in store. The wind stilled. The world around them grew quiet, as if holding its breath. And then everything faded to black. When Mia opened her eyes, she was in bed. The birds were singing outside, but this time the other side of the bed was empty.